Week 2 of the NFL season is officially over. We had some very exciting matchups this week and some teams that have jumped up in my power rankings, as well as some pretty big disappointments this week as well in teams that continue to drop. If you guys are new to the channel, I do these every week after the Monday Night Football game. We're doing a little bit of a different style this year. We will be incorporating as many clips as possible. Now, I do want to apologize to a few teams. Wasn't able to really gather any clips from this week's game. Buffalo, Seattle, Chicago, New York, San Francisco. A couple of those teams, we're just going to play it out. Unfortunately, that's just the way it ended up going. I'm going to do my best to try and get as many in here as we possibly can. Also, stay tuned for the rest of the week. My first weekly mock draft will be dropping on Wednesday afternoon. We've got the 2 prospect spotlights this weekend, as well as our college football stock report. So if you guys do enjoy videos like this, hitting that like and subscribe button really does help the channel. But without further ado, let's get into it. Taking a look at my number 32 overall team, that is going to be the Carolina Panthers. I was wrong. I thought this team was going to come out with some urgency. They were going to be a little bit better than we expected. They were absolutely horrible. They couldn't do anything. I mean, maybe I was too low on the Saints. With Clint Kubiak, their offense just had themselves a field day. But this is a team that you cannot let that happen against a division opponent that isn't very good either. Bryce Young looked terrible. This is a team that tried to bolster their offensive line, couldn't do it. Alontae Taylor had 3 sacks in this game from that nickel spot. He couldn't read a blitz, and Bryce Young looks like the worst starting quarterback in football, which pains me to say because I was Bryce Young QB1 guy, as were most people, but Bryce Young looked like an absolute disaster this week. On top of that, Deontay Johnson, I believe he had 19 yards receiving in this game. The offensive line didn't do him any favors, and you let a bad Saints offense absolutely light you up. This just can't happen if you're Carolina, and this is an embarrassing loss in the first game under Dave Canales. I don't see how they can't be the worst team in the league. Like I said, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. I liked the offseason they had, and now Derek Brown is out for probably the season, who is by far your best player. J.C. Horn has injury histories, a defense that already sucked. You're dealing with the injury bug early, and I just don't see how it's going to get much better from here for Carolina. They are the worst team in football, and I don't think it's particularly close right now. My number 31 spot didn't change this week. It's the New York Football Giants, and we talked about Bryce Young being the worst quarterback in football. I think Daniel Jones has a strong case to be number 2. It was just a rough showing from this team altogether, and we talked about it in the Week 1 power rankings. This is a team that I think is really lacking talent. Now, one thing that I will say that's positive about this Giants team, Dexter Lawrence might be the best interior defensive player in football right now. He was absolutely incredible in this game. It seemed like every other play, he's pushing the pocket, getting pressure. I mean, his hand usage was incredible in this game against a pretty decent Minnesota offensive line. Dexter Lawrence was out of his mind yesterday, but that was really it. This is a team that has horrible quarterback play with Daniel Jones. They can't really establish the run. The receivers, Malik Neighbors, just couldn't get the ball because Daniel Jones isn't a very good football player. I think that's really what it's going to come down to. And until New York addresses their quarterback issue, I don't really think that's going to change. They desperately need to upgrade at that quarterback position. Maybe that'll happen in this upcoming draft in free agency, but until that does, I just can't pick the Giants to do very much this year. And I just think there's a team that is lacking talent on both ends of the football. The offensive line didn't do an incredible job of protecting Daniel Jones, and even if they did, I don't really trust him to make plays happen. The Giants are going to be sitting at my number 31 spot. At number 30, it is the Washington Commanders. Now, there are some few bright spots to take away from this game. Number 1, I think Jaden Daniels had the best offensive rookie performance of all of the guys this weekend. I think you look at Caleb Williams, he had his ups and downs against a pretty solid Tennessee defense. Bo Nix really, really struggled this weekend. Obviously, Michael Penix didn't play. Drake May didn't play. So when you're comparing to the rookie quarterbacks, I think Jaden Daniels had himself a day. I believe he had 16 carries, 88 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns in this game. Looked comfortable moving around at the NFL level, which you like to see. The defense was terrible. That's going to be the next segue here. Couldn't really get any stops against Tampa Bay. And that was one of my big concerns with Washington coming into the year. It was, how is this secondary going to look? And well, they kind of answered that question, and they desperately need a secondary piece. On top of that, I thought that the wide receivers were very underwhelming. And you look at Terry McLaurin, I think this could be the most down year of Terry McLaurin's career. And the reason I say that is because teams now know you can just double him pretty much every time, because there isn't another weapon in Washington that I truly trust to make any sort of a play on any given down. Luke McCaffrey, I thought, was heavily overdrafted. Jamison Crowder is getting up there in age. De'Ami Brown is kind of mostly a deep threat. Those are going to be major concerns that you have. Austin Eckler, though, he showed up, had a pretty good game, receiving out of the backfield, which is obviously one of his biggest strengths, and it has been for a few years now. You had a good game from him, but this is a defense that I think desperately needs to improve. They were getting cooked all game. Baker Mayfield lit up this defense, and I need to see a little bit more progression here from this Washington team on the defensive side of the ball. Now, I think they got the coaches in place to do it, but until they can, they haven't moved up or down. Even though I do take some positives away, they're still my number 30 team. At number 29, dropping 2 spots are going to be the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee had a very interesting game. The first half was pretty perfect. Things went well. You had a good game from Tony Pollard. He ran the ball very effectively, which was a bit of a surprise. One of those free agent pickups that happened that I just really didn't understand. Tyjae Spears is my guy, so I was like, give him the opportunity, let him be the number 1 guy. Tony Pollard had a really good game, had a couple of really big runs, touchdown in this game. You like to see that from him. On top of that, the defense was incredible. Tavondre Sweat was a menace, stuffing the run, had some pass rush juice, which you really like to see. You saw some stuff from Sebastian Joseph Day. And the first half looked pretty good. And the second half, this team just completely embarrassed themselves. And it starts at the quarterback position. Will Levis really, really disappointed yesterday. Had a couple of interceptions, timely, costly interceptions for this Titans team. And, you know, he was a guy that fell to the second round for a reason. Now, if you guys know this, not a big Will Levis guy. So it doesn't really surprise me. The footwork is very inaccurate. He loves to take shots and force the ball into windows that aren't necessarily there. And the offensive line didn't do him any favors. J.C. Latham was their first-round pick. Horrible debut from him. The offensive line coach there, and Bill Callahan's got a lot of work to do. It was a very inconsistent game from this Tennessee team, and the rest of the AFC looked pretty good right now as things stand. I think they had one of the worst losses considering you were up 17-0 on the road, and your offense and special teams pretty much lost you the game. The defense looked solid, but they didn't really get any momentum going, and they're going to be sitting at my number 29 spot. At number 28, jumping up 4 spots, are the New England Patriots. Now, I really don't know how they won this football game. You look at it, Cincinnati had actually a pretty good game. Joe Burrow, when you look at the numbers, was completing passes, getting the ball out, was pretty accurate with the football. And then you kind of look a little bit deeper. They just ran the ball down the throats of the Bengals all game. Ramondre Stevenson had a heck of a performance on the road in Cincinnati, and they got the win really on his back. On top of that, Keon White, my breakout candidate, was incredible. I think he was top 5 in the league in pressures this weekend. If those are the kind of performances you're getting on a week-to-week basis, you feel pretty good about this Patriots team. The offensive line didn't really have a bad game. They did a pretty solid job run blocking, which you like to see. Overall, I thought it was a good win for New England. Now, I would say it is one of those things where I'm not too surprised because Cincinnati, they always lose week 1. They had some weird stuff with the Jamar Chase situation, but they did win this football game. They didn't look like the worst team in football. Christian Gonzalez had a really, really good game against Jamar Chase, which you absolutely love to see. A really good win for the Patriots in Gerard Mayo's first game as the head coach. They jump up 4 spots from my number 32 spot. I thought they were one of the worst teams in the league. They very well might be That's why I'm not putting a ton of stock into this win, but a much-needed victory to jump up in the power rankings, and they're sitting at my number 28 spot. Sticking with another team that I thought was terrible and still might be, it is the New Orleans Saints. And first of all, I mean, you beat the Carolina Panthers, which we talked about the Panthers already. They were absolutely horrible. But I think what was most impressive to me was Derek Carr had a really good game, had 3 touchdowns in this game, looked comfortable in this Saints offense, getting the ball out of his hands quickly, made plays happen with his legs on the run. You like to see that from them. This is a defense that does a really good job of mixing in the blitz, and, you know, they have good coverage schemes, and that showed today. Alontae Taylor, we mentioned, 3 sacks this weekend. He looked very impressive. Talise Fuaga, the first-round pick, was almost as perfect as it can get for a first-round rookie, which you really like to see. He was very good as a run blocker, didn't have a loss in pass protection. Starting at left tackle, you feel really good about that if you're a Saints fan. And if the offense can kind of move, have that consistency, I think the Saints team could end up jumping. They impressed me this weekend. We're one of those teams that I thought might be one of the worst teams in the league. I think I did pick them to finish with a bottom 5 record, and they still might. I still think this team has a lot of question marks. You went up against the worst team in football, but they were so dominant for 4 quarters in that game. I was really, really impressed with what I saw, and I got the Saints jumping up from the 29th spot to number 27, sitting with a 1-0 record. I think that was a really good win for the Saints team. At 26, staying the same are going to be the Denver Broncos. Now, the offense really, really struggled in this game. Bo Nix had a horrible, horrible debut, about as bad as it can get. I mean, we talk about Caleb Williams having a bad debut. Bo Nix was rough in this one. And I'm a Bo Nix guy. I liked him quite a bit. You can't see it. His picture's on the wall here behind me. Was able to get a signature from him at Broncos training camp this year. And you saw some of the stuff that you wanted to see, getting the ball out quickly, the velocity, but really struggled. Had 2 interceptions, ugly interceptions in this game too. You didn't want to see that. This team couldn't establish any sort of ground game whatsoever. But on the other hand, I thought their defense was very, very impressive in this game, particularly Jonathan Cooper. 2 sacks, had 5 pressures in this game. He was flying around for this Broncos team. This is a Broncos team that had 2 safeties in the first half. This is a defensive line that did wonders. And for a defensive line that I thought really, really struggled last year and was one of the units that I was worried about with this team, I thought they looked pretty good. Obviously, not going to put a ton of stock. It's a rookie quarterback, his debut. You wanted to see a little bit more there from him. I get it, but I also thought what we did see from him was good enough. I've got the Broncos sitting at number 26. Hopefully they can continue to jump up. The defensive line we talked about, the defense as a whole was really impressive, and I got them sitting at the number 26 spot. Another team staying the same here are going to be the Las Vegas Raiders, sitting at the number 25 spot. And I was a little bit concerned about this team because they didn't have any quarterback. And, well, that kind of reigned true. Gardner Minshew didn't have the greatest of games, but I think it really comes down to poor coaching decisions by Antonio Pierce. It's a 4th and 1 with like 6 minutes to go. You're in their territory. You got to go for it there. He punts the ball back. Just bad coaching decisions from Las Vegas. And we talked about it in the week 1. How good is Antonio Pierce as a coach? The team rallied behind him as the interim. But now that he's the guy in charge, what kind of system is he going to put in place? And is it going to be one that helps this team? And is it going to be respected around the league? Those are the type of things you just can't get into as a head coach. You can't get into those situations. And he really struggled in that regard. Now, I thought Brock Bowers was really good, but other than that, I had some concerns. Max Crosby was kind of shut down, in all honesty, by Joe Alt, which was, I think he had 4 or 5 pressures and a sack in this game, but you wanted to see a little bit more dominance from him. And when he was matched up one-on-one with Alt won every single one of those reps. The defense as a whole, it was okay. Christian Wilkins made some stuff happen, but I think it was kind of where I expected Vegas to be. They'll be a little bit scrappy, but I just don't know if they got the pieces to finish games, and they stay put at my number 25 spot. Another team staying where they are, it's the Arizona Cardinals at my number 24 spot. This is a team that was really, really impressive in the first half, and the play calling was everywhere. I thought Kyler Murray looked like an MVP candidate in the first half of this game, the way he was running around, making plays happen on the move, finding guys like Michael Wilson. Greg Dortch had a good game. James Conner was getting involved in the receiving game, and the way they were running the football with Kyler, Trey Benson, and James Conner. I still think this is going to be one of the best running attacks and one of the best offenses in all of football. The defense in the second half completely embarrassed themselves, got absolutely ran off the field, figuratively and literally, by Josh Allen in the second half of this game. They end up blowing the lead and losing, but I think there's some things that you feel pretty positive about. You feel pretty positive about how the offense looks moving forward. You feel pretty good about the development of Michael Wilson, who was one of my guys in the 2023 draft. He's looked really, really good in the game yesterday. You feel pretty good about Kyler right now. I think those are some positives. You got to find a way to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the football, though. He had 1 reception for 4 yards in this game. I don't think by any means they're regretting the pick. I've seen some of those stupid NFL aggregator accounts saying, oh, the Cardinals regret the pick. I don't think that's the case in the slightest. I think it's a simple, you got to give him more easy routes. They had him running a lot of goes, a lot of out routes, and throws that Kyler is not going to be making on any given basis. You got to give him these short slants, some crossers underneath. You got to give him the ball in the short to intermediate game and get a rhythm going. I thought Marvin Harrison Jr. looked fine yesterday, so I'm not really worried about it. But overall, this is a Cardinals team that is kind of where I think they were going to be. I think the defense had its ups and downs, but nonetheless, they're sitting in my number 24 spot, and I think they got a chance to be a pretty solid team this upcoming year. Another team that's going to be staying the same, it's the Los Angeles Chargers at the number 23 spot. Justin Herbert had an okay game. Really, this team was able to run the ball on Las Vegas, which was a bit of a surprise. The Chargers, J.K. Dobbins came out of nowhere in this game, had like 135 yards in this game, had a touchdown. I believe he's second in the NFL in rushing yards right now. Really, the big concern with him is, can he stay healthy? And he looked pretty healthy yesterday in a huge win in the first game of the Jim Harbaugh era. I was pretty impressed. I think that this defense was pretty solid as well. Khalil Mack had 1.5 sacks. Joey Bosa had a really, really nice forced fumble in the open field. And the offensive line, we talked about it. Joe Alt was dominant. I'm sorry, Chargers fans that wanted Malik Neighbors. You made the right pick. Justin Herbert had time. Ladd McConkey got going in this game a little bit. You feel really, really good about this young core in Los Angeles. You beat on the Raiders. They had some struggles in the first half, which is why they didn't really move up this week. But overall, I think this was a good win for the Chargers. Doesn't really change my outlook on them. I still think they're kind of a middling team, like 6 to 8 wins on the year. But overall, good performance, and they're sitting at my number 23 spot. At number 22, we got the Minnesota Vikings, and Sam Darnold was one of the best quarterbacks in week 1. I've been telling y'all, don't sell the Sam Darnold hype. I think he's still got something there, and he looked pretty good in week 1. Had an interception in this game, which you don't love to see, but I was pretty impressed. Justin Jefferson got going. The run game with Aaron Jones got going as well. The defense looked pretty good. Now you wonder how much of that is you're playing the New York Giants and how much of it is Brian Flores' defense, but overall, I thought it was a good game for the Vikings. It was a game I expected them to win. You're on the road against one of the worst teams in the league. The interior offensive line, we talked about Dexter Lawrence and how dominant he was. That might be something that you're a little bit worried about if you are Minnesota. But overall, I thought this was a really good performance. I feel really good about this offense moving forward with Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson. And if Sam Darnold can continue to be the type of player that he was yesterday, Minnesota could have a sneaky chance in the wild card. He's a good quarterback that has really not had a chance to get into a system that allows him to play to his strengths. There's a Minnesota team that does that, and he showcased that he can be a starting quarterback in the NFL still. And I got Minnesota sitting at number 22. At number 21, we got the Seattle Seahawks. Now I just want to get the elephant out of the room. This offensive line is maybe the worst in football. So I don't think they're going to be staying at number 21 for a while, because it's not every day you go up against a Bo Nix who really struggles in his NFL debut. That being said, though, I thought that they did a really nice job defensively. Devon Witherspoon had an incredible game, stuffing the run, also made some plays happen as a pass rusher on blitzes. Reek Woolen had a good game in coverage. Those two areas you'll love to see. We knew that Mike McDonald was going to come in and the secondary was going to have a really, really good time, and we did see that. But I think the most impressive part about this game was Boye Mafe. Boye Mafe was incredible. He had, I believe, 7 pressures in this game, and a guy that was a second-round pick out of Minnesota that a lot of people had kind of just put on the back burner like, okay, yeah, he might be a third piece for this team, a rotational guy. He looked like their number one yesterday, and he seemed to be constantly in the backfield making plays happen for the for the Seattle defense, And it's not a bad Denver offensive line. So I feel pretty good about the Seattle team defensively moving forward. Offensively, the offensive line was so bad. They allowed 2 safeties in the first half. Geno Smith had some ups and downs in this game. Overall, finished pretty strong. I like this offense. I don't think it's going to be an incredible group, but overall, they stay at my number 21 spot. I thought their defense was really impressive, and they looked very, very good at just getting to the quarterback. So I've got them sitting at the number 21 spot in the league. Finally, a team that does drop a little bit this week, and it is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville was a team that a lot of people were a little bit higher on, and this is a team that looked really good in the first half. I believe they had a 14-0 lead, ended up blowing it, and the defense completely collapsed in the second half of this game. But on top of that, I thought the offensive play calling in the second half of this game really had some struggles. Doug Peterson is a coach that seems very old school, cannot seem to develop any sort of a run game. It was very strange to me. I want a Jacksonville fan to explain this to me in the comments. Why was Tank Bigsby getting a majority of the carries when you still have Travis Etienne, who's a really, really good running back? I didn't understand that. Now, on the bright side for this defense, Trayvon Walker had a couple of sacks. It looked like he finally was getting comfortable in this sort of a defensive scheme. The defense as a whole played pretty good, I would say, for 3 quarters. And I thought Trevor Lawrence was really good in this game. He was accurate with the football. That touchdown pass he had to Brian Thomas Jr. was absolutely absurd. But when you look at the coaching staff, you look at the way that the plays were ran, and you look at the way that this defense fell apart, it's hard for them not to rank in the 20s right now. I think it's a good football team. They're going to win, same as the Chargers, between like 7 to 9 wins. But is that good enough to get you into the playoffs in a loaded AFC? I'm not so sure, and I've got them sitting at number 20. At number 19, we got the Atlanta Falcons, and Atlanta is a team that everyone kind of bought into the hype. They're like, oh, they got Kirk Cousins, lock him in to win the South. And I'm just sitting here. Now, admittedly, I did pick them to win the NFC South after the Judon and Justin Simmons pickups, but I remember sitting here, and I was like, are we sure that this is the best team in the division? Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles tear. They still really have no pass rush whatsoever. And the secondary has concerns outside of A.J. Terrell and Jesse Bates. And, well, that kind of rang true yesterday. And I think it starts with Kirk Cousins, who really didn't look good in this game, just looked uncomfortable, didn't look fully healthy on the Achilles, forced the ball in windows you wouldn't see him force it into in years prior. And on top of that, was a little bit concerned about the play calling because you didn't really get a lot to Drake London in this game. Joey Porter Jr. had a good performance against him, but they didn't run the ball with Bijan Robinson, which I would have expected a little bit more. This offensive line was not as good as they have been in years prior, and the defense didn't really get anything going either. This is a game where you didn't allow a touchdown to the Steelers because the Steelers offense can't move the ball. I think that's more an indication on a bad Steelers team than a good Falcons team. But they just couldn't get off the field. And the offense had chance after chance, and it was turnover or sack or tackle for loss. And it just seemed like this team could never get anything going. And if Kirk Cousins is not Kirk Cousins and he was as bad as he looked yesterday, you might have to be looking at that Michael Penix pick a little bit sooner. I know it's early, it's 1 week, but this Falcons team did not look like the best in the division. They didn't look like this playoff team, Super Bowl team that people had been talking about. And I do have some concerns. So I've got the Falcons sitting at number 19, but I think the outlook on them is pretty gray right now if they don't get things fixed and fast. At number 18, up one spot, it is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, who will get out of the way really quickly. The offense is terrible. The offense for Pittsburgh is so one-dimensional. If you can stop the run, if you can stop George Pickens, you can pretty much beat this team. They have no weapons in the middle of the field that I trust really on any given basis. And when you looked at the play design, Justin Fields had 0 throws to the middle of the field. 0 in the game yesterday. I do think Russell Wilson will be the starter when they get back into it. I know Justin Fields makes things happen with his legs, but so does Russell Wilson. I just don't really see that there. The defense is still one of the best units in football. You had a really, really good TJ Watt game where he just seemed to be everywhere for this defense, which you really love to see. That's all good and great, but I'm really worried about Pittsburgh because when you look at this team, they have really limited playmakers, and they didn't even get into the end zone of the game, and they somehow were able to win. I don't know how that happens, but they're sitting at number 18. It's a loaded league right now. The defense is really good. You got to be able to make plays happen offensively, and they go up one spot. My number 17 team is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a team that I want to buy more hype in as soon as possible because I really, really like the way that this team is constructed. Baker Mayfield is my favorite player in the league, not named Anthony Richardson or Sauce Gardner. Baker Mayfield has been my guy since he was drafted, and it is so good talking positively about Baker again. 4 touchdowns against Washington, looked comfortable, made some incredible throws in this game that just leave your jaw dropped, and you love to see that. The playmakers on this team, they got all the pieces offensively that you could want. Maybe you want a little bit more of a consistent run game, but even the offensive line looked really good. The defense has pieces as well. I know Antoine Winfield's going to miss a couple of games, but I feel pretty good about this Tampa team. They looked really dominant. This is a team that has made the playoffs each of the last 5 years, I want to say. They've looked really good, and I still have a lot of faith that this team can get back into the playoffs. The NFC didn't look particularly incredible. You look at teams like the Rams, who had 1 billion injuries. We just talked about why I'm lower on the Falcons. The door might be open for Tampa to make a little bit of a run right now, and they're returning a lot of the same team from last year that had some playoff success. I think Baker Mayfield right now is probably the favorite to win MVP with that 4-touchdown performance, but really good stuff from Tampa Bay. They jump up 3 spots, are one of the biggest risers this week, and they jump up to my number 17 team. At number 16, we got the Chicago Bears staying where they are. I think they kind of looked like a middle team in the league. Caleb Williams had his struggles in the first game of his NFL career. But on top of that, I think the defense was really, really solid, particularly in the second half. Darrell Taylor was everywhere for this Bears team yesterday, was creating pressure, making stuff happen, and had a really good game. The defense forced interceptions. The special teams had a touchdown as well. And you feel really good about this Bears defense, who ranked towards the top of the league last year post the Montez Sweat trade. You have that happen. Now, what you do want to see, you want to see this offense be a little bit more consistent. Caleb Williams had a lot of inconsistencies in this first game of his career. You want to see that get cleaned up. You want to see more consistency in the run game. But I didn't see anything that felt like I should drop them. I still think they're around the middle of the league. They won their game against Tennessee, had a really nice comeback. I've got them sitting at my number 16 spot in the league right now. Another team staying the same are the Indianapolis Colts here at 15. There's a few things I take away from this game as a Colts fan. Number one, when Josh Downs comes back, I think this is going to be a top 3 offense in the league. Jonathan Taylor looked good in this game. Anthony Richardson on his legs looked very impressive. But more importantly, Anthony Richardson through the air looked impressive. Made some incredible throws in this game. Throws that I don't think any quarterback in the league other than him could have made. That throw to Alec Pierce was one of the most insane touchdown throws I have ever seen. One of the best throws in Lucas Oil since Andrew Luck was in the building. This is a team that has all the pieces. I've talked about it. The offensive line played really, really well yesterday. The big issue wasn't even the secondary, the run defense. This team could not stop the Houston run. And when it came down to it, that's what lost them this game. They lost their first game of the year against one of the Super Bowl favorites by 2 points. I feel really hopeful as a Colts fan right now that they can get this thing back on track. Anthony Richardson was one of the best quarterbacks of the week in week 1, had some really good throws. I know people are going to talk about the completion percentage. He still made some big plays happen, was clutch in this game, getting the Colts down the field. I'm really impressed with what we saw from him. They did lose, but they got Malik Willis next week in the Bears offense that we talked about, had some ups and downs. So I think this team could get to 2-1. They're sitting at number 15, and I'm feeling pretty good as a Colts fan. I didn't see anything that makes me want to move them down, but they've got to be able to stop the run as soon as they possibly can. At number 14, it's the Los Angeles Rams. It really sucks. They're dealing with the injury bug already. Puka Nacua, pretty much the entire offensive line, just a absolute disaster. Didn't get the ball in overtime, ended up losing. But they looked really solid, I would say. Jared Verse right now is the favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, I think. Had a sack in this game, had about 6 pressures, was in the backfield, showed the pass rush moves. Really, really liked what we saw from him as a number 1 rusher for this team. There's a lot of question marks around this Rams defense, but I thought Jared Verse stepped up, was able to create pressure. You feel pretty good about that. This is a team that could become very one-dimensional very fast, though. When you look at it, if Puka Nacua is down, they're just going to force feed the ball to Cooper Kupp every time. He was targeted 21 times in the game. That is not a typo. 21 times Cooper Kupp was targeted. Had 14 receptions in the game. You love to see it for Cooper Kupp. He looks healthy again, but they're going to become one-dimensional. Stafford looked pretty solid, but this is a team that is dealing with a ton of injuries. I still feel about the same that they were. The defense is going to struggle. The offense is one of the best units in the league. They're 0-1. They're my number 14 team in the league right now. At number 13, and a potential team that could be even worse than this, they were absolutely horrible in week 1. It is the Cleveland Browns, and Deshaun Watson, it's over. It's over. This is a team that I fully expected was going to be one of the best teams in the AFC because of the defense. I was still holding out a little bit of faith that Deshaun Watson could turn into that guy we saw in Houston. That guy's gone. He's nowhere to be found. His processing is terrible. Decision-making is horrible. Putting the ball in harm's way. He doesn't even seem to have the athleticism, the pocket awareness that he used to have. Just a brutal performance from him. The offensive line, though, has to be your biggest concern as a Cleveland fan. They couldn't protect Watson, whether he was terrible or not. They just were in the backfield every time. So that's an area that seems like it's going to need to be improved sooner rather than later. And then the defense, I thought they were fine, but it wasn't the same defense that we saw last year that was out of this world. Myles Garrett did his thing. There's really no surprise there, but just a pretty bad performance from a team that has high expectations. They dropped 3 spots to me to number 13, and with another ugly loss like that, they could be out of the top half of the league really fast. Horrible game from the Cleveland Browns. At number 12, we got the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm honestly not even that worried about this loss. They do drop a little bit because you were missing T. Higgins. Jamar Chase had the weird contract stuff and was dealing with an illness, according to the team. Okay. But this is a team that really was missing DJ Reader. They lost Jesse Bates last year, and their safety play fell off a cliff. This year, you lose DJ Reader, one of the best run-stopping nose tackles in football, and they couldn't stop Ramondre Stevenson, and that's really what lost them this game. I thought Joe Burrow was fine. I thought there were a few plays in this game that they could have scored on that the receivers kind of let him down, but overall, I thought they were fine. The big issue with this team is going to be the run defense. Can they stop the run? Ramondre Stevenson, we talked about it. He feasted on this team. If they can stop the run on a consistent basis, I think there's a team that can win some football games. But if not, I think it could be a struggle this year for the Cincinnati Bengals. Once again, They dropped 4 spots to me. They are at my number 12 team in the league. At number 11, we got the Buffalo Bills. They jump up 1 spot. I mean, I really struggle with this Bills team. They looked solid, I guess, in the second half of this game, but the first half was terrible. About as bad of a first half as you could have hoped for as a Buffalo fan. You end up having a huge second half. Josh Allen finishes with 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns. You saw some stuff from Keon Coleman that you feel pretty hopeful about. You saw some stuff from Khalil Shakir. If you get consistent performances from those two, and obviously you know Josh Allen, Buffalo can win a Super Bowl this year. I really do think that this is a talented enough roster. But I think the most important takeaway from this game, if you are a Buffalo fan, was Greg Rousseau, who showed up in this game unlike he has at any point in his career. He looked very impressive, had a few pressures in this game, couple sacks, and made plays happen for this Buffalo defense. If you've got that number 1 edge rusher that we haven't really seen him develop into yet, but you've seen flashes, if he takes that next step, the sky is the limit for this Buffalo team. They jump up 1 spot because that first half was a little bit iffy. You want to see a little bit more consistency, but I definitely liked what we saw from this team, and they're sitting at number 11. Jumping up 3 for me, it is going to be the Miami Dolphins, and this is a team that had an incredible turnaround. What a weird day for the Miami Dolphins. You wake up, you have the Tyreek Hill's getting arrested situation in the morning, ends up playing the game, has 6 targets, 105 yards, 80-yard touchdown, does Tyreek Hill things. But this team really sluggish out the gates. Tua had a lot of inconsistencies in this game. The defense, though, in the second half really, really showed up and got stops, got the offense the ball back, and they end up coming back and winning this football game. That's what we needed to see from the Dolphins. I jump them up 3 spots. I was already pretty low on the Dolphins. I think 10 is around where most people would have them anyways. You saw what you wanted to see. Now, my big worry about this team was the sluggish first half. This is a team that needs to start quickly because they don't play well from behind. They're going to need to kind of fix that going into this upcoming week. I got them at number 10. I think there's some things to take away from this game that you feel pretty positive about, though, if you are a Miami Dolphins fan. Dropping 2 spots this week, it's going to be the Green Bay Packers, and I thought they looked fine. Josh Jacobs really got things going in the fourth quarter. I feel really good about this receiving room, though. When you got Jaden Reed going off the way that he did, you have a pretty good performance from Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. The receiving room looks pretty good. Offensive line looks pretty good. Horrible field conditions there in Brazil. I'm not using that as an excuse, but Jordan Love, week to week right now, doesn't really seem like he's going to play this Sunday against Indianapolis. They're going to probably be 0-2 if I had to guess, because that's just – if Malik Willis is starting, because they already announced he would be the starter next week if Jordan Love isn't good to go, I feel pretty bad about this Packers outlook going forward. I thought the defense as a whole was okay. They couldn't stop Saquon Barkley in this game. But, yeah, they dropped 2 spots. I'm not too worried about it. Obviously, the more time Jordan Love misses, the more time I will be worried about this. But they're sitting at number 9. Thank God Jordan Love avoided a serious ACL injury. But at number 9, I do have the Packers dropping 2 spots. There are some concerns there to be had. Sluggish start from Jacobs, but not putting a ton of stock into this game if I'm a Packers fan. At number 8, we have the New York Jets that dropped 2 spots from my number 6. I feel pretty good about this Jets team moving forward. Had one of the toughest games on their schedule tonight in San Francisco. This is a Niners team coming off the Super Bowl that's feeling really hungry, ready to go out there and prove it. And I thought the Jets hung with them pretty well in this game in the first half at least. They looked like they belonged. What I do think was the biggest takeaway, Aaron Rodgers looked good in this game. There were a few passes in this game that felt rushed. You definitely could tell he just didn't want to get hit at all, and he was just trying to get the ball out of his hands as quickly as possible. But you saw some vintage Rodgers throws in there that make you feel really good. And once Mike Williams is more acclimated into this offense, I think you're going to get him in there as quickly as possible. The big issue, though, they couldn't stop the run. You get the news Christian McCaffrey's out, you feel pretty good. You're like, okay, they just could not stop the run consistently, which is very interesting. because Bryce Huff was pretty terrible as a run defender last year anyways. Hassan Reddick brings you a little bit more there, so you definitely want him back. But I was a little bit worried about that run defense. That was a big issue for this team. It seemed like anytime it was 3rd and short, you knew San Francisco was going to convert it because they were just running the ball down the throats of this team the entire game. But I liked what we saw from Breece Hall. Garrett Wilson looked good. Allen Lazard looked solid. The offensive line did a good job. I think the Jets looked pretty good in this game, but you need to see a little bit more consistency. I know people are going to say I'm too high on the Jets. Don't care. They're my number 8 team in the league. At number 7, one of the big risers from the week, it is the Dallas Cowboys. I had concerns about the O-line. Cooper Beebe out the gates, one of my guys in this draft class, and he was incredible in this game. They moved him to center. He was practically perfect in this game for the Cowboys. And defense did an incredible job. Micah Parsons, probably the leader for Defensive Player of the Year right now. He was my pick to win it. He looked incredible in this opener against Cleveland. Trayvon Diggs was really, really good in this game. Was locked down, had an interception. I think he only allowed 23 yards. That's promising. DeMarcus Lawrence was really good in this game. The offensive line did its thing, and then Dak Prescott got it going as well. Really no issues at all with this Dallas team. They looked really, really good. Do I think this is the year they take the next step? No, because I still think there are holes. Still don't have a consistent running game. I don't expect Brandon Cooks to be like that each and every week, but overall, a really good show from the Cowboys. One I feel pretty good about if I'm a Cowboys fan, and I got them at number 7. At number 6, we got the Houston Texans. They jump up 3 spots, beat Indianapolis on the road. I mean, Houston was a team that I expected to win this division. What I didn't expect Houston to do was run the football the way they did. Joe Mixon was a guy that I was like, okay, I'm kind of out on Joe Mixon. He was incredible in this game. I think he had 24 carries for like 180 yards or something like that. Leads the NFL in rushing after week 1. Just absolutely incredible game from him. The defense had some struggles, though. They had some blown coverages. The safety room, you got to see improve a little bit. The pass rush was okay. I wasn't wowed by their defense, but their offense looked really good. The offensive line did a good job of protecting Stroud. They were opening run lanes. Kenyon Green with one of his best games in his NFL career. You got Diggs and Collins and Dell all involved, and then you were able to run the football. This offense was really, really good. They jump up 3 spots. Was really impressed by what the Texans showed in week 1. At number 5, I got the Baltimore Ravens. Really not much to take away from this team. They went into the defending champs' building and were right in it until the very last play. Isaiah Likely looked incredible. Zay Flowers had a good game, and Lamar Jackson was pretty much perfect. The defense, you had some concerns about. You definitely felt the loss of a guy like Jadeveon Clowney at times. Just the pass rush wasn't all the way there. But I really liked what we saw from Trenton Simpson filling in that Patrick Queen role. Kind of was a rotational guy for them, but he looked really, really good. Roquan Smith didn't have a very good game, surprisingly, but I really liked what we saw from Baltimore, to be completely honest. Not a game that I'm really worried about. Now, Lamar cannot be taking those hits. Was a bit surprised at the lack of Derrick Henry in this offense. That was a big surprise to me, but I like this Ravens team. I picked them to go to the AFC Championship. That doesn't really change after week 1. They stay at my number 5 spot. At number 4, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that wins in Brazil. Saquon Barkley was remarkable in this game for them. He just did everything, and this is a team that we knew wanted to lean heavily into the rushing attack. They finally have a running back that I think they can do that with. Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, DeAndre Swift, they're fine running backs. They're not Saquon Barkley. This offensive line did a really good job. The defense did its thing. The big issue in this is going to be Jalen Hurts. Can Jalen Hurts be solid enough to keep you in games? Had some costly turnovers for this team that you need to get cleaned up as soon as possible, because if he's going to be putting the ball in harm's way, there is a lot of concern there if you are an Eagles fan. And some bad turnovers from Hurts. That being said, I feel really good about the Eagles moving forward. They stay at my number 4 spot as they go up to 1-0 on the season. At number 3, we got the Detroit Lions remaining the same as well. Really not much to be said. They showed what we wanted them to see. We saw what we wanted to see from this team, I should say. Aiden Hutchinson was incredible, almost a 50% pass rush win rate in week 1. Jameson Williams is the big standout, though. Jameson Williams had some inconsistencies up to this point in his career, had one of the best games of his career, including a long touchdown in this one. Showed to be that deep threat that Detroit has desperately needed in this offense. And if he gets it going, he opens up this entire thing for the squad. David Montgomery had a good game. I mean, overall, was pretty impressive offensive performance from the Lions. Maybe the scoreboard doesn't show it, but they got things going. They're my number 3 team this week. At number 2, we've got the San Francisco 49ers. No Christian McCaffrey, no problem. I mean, it was pretty much over from the beginning. Jordan Mason was incredible for this team coming in as the starter, and every single play he was making something happen. Brock Purdy looked good. I like the way they got Debo involved in this offense. Really no complaints about the offense. And then defensively, they looked really sharp as well. Fred Warner had himself a really good game. Lenore was really impressive from that slot corner spot. Not a lot to be said with San Francisco. We knew they were the best team in the NFC coming in. They showed to be that same team this week. They're my number 2 team. And, of course, number 1 is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't see how it could be anyone else. The defense was pretty solid in this game, but the offense was that old Kansas City offense again. And it's frustrating to watch, but it's also fun at the same time because you got Xavier Worthy out here on swing passes getting 60-yard plays. You've got Rashee Rice who's getting open in the middle of the field. How he didn't get suspended, I still don't know. Travis Kelce doing his thing. And then you got other pieces all around. They didn't even have Hollywood Brown. Isaiah Pacheco was incredible in this game for them. Patrick Mahomes didn't even have that good of a game. The defense didn't have that good of a game. They still won at home on the road, or they won at home. They're 1-0. Really, really good performance from Kansas City, and they remain the number 1 team in my power rankings. But that's going to do it for me in this week's episode, guys. Let me know who you guys have at the top of the league. What do your power rankings look like after 1 week of play? Leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.